to be reviewing and testing First Impressions, the Essence Be-You-Tiful eyeshadow palette, and this is what the outside of the palette looks like, and then this is what the inside of the palette looks like. So I figured that a 9-pan palette like this, a drugstore palette, would be most comparable to a ColourPop palette. So I decided to go on their site and look up what their 9-pan shadow palettes go for. And for example, the ColourPop It's My Pleasure palette, it goes for $12 American. So I'm assuming that would be around like 13, probably closer to 14, 15 Canadian. The Essence palette at 13 Canadian is still cheaper than what you would be getting at ColourPop, so I think that's good. But because it is pretty comparable in price, I am going to expect these to perform on the same level as my ColourPop shadows do, so I will use that as the basis for testing. They came out with a couple of these palettes. I can link them all down below. The 9-pan ones, I think they came out with 3 different ones. This was the one that interested me the most, and when I actually first saw this image, I thought of the ColourPop and Kathleen Light's Dream Street palette. So looking like that, I think that they're kind of similar. They just kind of reminded me of each other in their color story. Obviously, the ColourPop palette has more metallics. The shimmers are more intense, I would assume, and it has like a bright teal, and this one doesn't, but the color scheme just right off the bat kind of reminds me of one another. So I just figured that that was worth mentioning. I'm not saying that they're dupes or anything. The colors are definitely different in both palettes, but that's what I first thought of when I saw this. So without any further ado, let's get on into the demo, first impressions, and review of the Essence Be-You-Tiful eyeshadow palette. Let's go. So I pulled a bunch of my brushes. I'm not sure exactly what kind of look I want to do. I feel like with this palette you are very limited in the looks that you can do, which is fine, especially for a brand like Essence. As long as they perform nicely, then that's awesome, because at $13 Canadian, that's like a really good price for a drugstore shadow. So I'm going to start off the look by going in with my Sephora Pro Tapered Crease, and I'm just going to take this shade here in the Buff, this top one, and I already went ahead and primed my lids, so that shade went on nicely. It definitely has some pigment to it. Sometimes with those shades I don't really notice a difference, but that definitely has some pigment to it. To start, I'm going to go in with this more cool toned brown in the corner. This one's a more warm toned brown. There's a good amount of kickback on the pan. Not getting much pigmentation on the eye from that. Do I see this fall out? It's literally all down my nose. What the hell? I feel like as I'm blending and trying to get more pigmentation from this shadow, it's almost just blending away, and the fallout on this is really crazy. So I'm gonna get rid of that. I'm going to try and go in with this fluffier brush and pick up some of that middle shade, the warmer brown. We'll see if that works better. So this shade is called On My Own. Again, this has a ton of kickback on it. That's not bad, it's just nothing crazy. So I'm gonna go ahead and just replicate that on the other eye, taking that cooler toned brown with this brush, going in and then taking the warm toned one. Now that I have a good base on both sides, I feel like this side went on much nicer. This side is just a little sloppy and not loving it. I'm going to try and darken up the outer corner with this Midnight shade, which is this like blackish, it almost looks like a deep navy, and I'm going to take my Morphe M321. This is just like a pointed pencil brush. Kind of wing it out almost and make that outer V shape. It's definitely not looking black. It looks more like a deep blue or a deep gray, I would say. I don't hate it. It's a little bit patchy, as you can tell right in here. So I'm going to try and build that up. Still just looks a little bit dull, and it's skipping a tiny bit on the eye. I'm not obsessed with that shade. I like that I went in with it just because I want to try as much as I can in this palette. It's just patchy. It's not what you would want from a shadow this color. Right here you can see it skipping a little, and then on the outer edge here it looks a little funny. So I'm going to go back in with the warmer brown shade in the middle, and I'm going to go with my crease brush, and I'm just going to take a little bit of that and try and bring it into the crease to make that darker blue, brown, whatever that color is, just a little less harsh, a little less intense. Just make it blend a little nicer, maybe, hopefully. I just feel like as I'm blending, especially right here, it's just patching so strangely and it's almost just blending into nothing. It could be because my eyes are super, super dry right now, but I feel like my other shadows wouldn't be behaving this way. So that is how it's looking right now. It just looks a little chalky, a little patchy, and I'm not loving it. So I'm going to take this deeper chocolatey brown champagne shade, and I'm going to take that on my Morphe M124, just a flat brush, pack that into the outer corner area of my eye, and then I'll go in with like probably this one, this lighter champagne in the inner corner. So I'm just going to go in with my index finger and see, it looks pretty like that. It's just hard to get precision when you go in with your finger. I'm going to wet this flat shader that I'm using with the Wet n Wild coconut primer water. Try applying it wet because it's really my last resource. Okay, so wetting the shadow, or wetting the brush, and then going in with the shadow is definitely the way to go. I don't know if you'll be able to tell, but it almost gives a foiled type of look. So I wouldn't recommend going in with a dry brush. I wouldn't recommend going in with your finger. For these shimmers, I would recommend wetting your brush and foiling it onto the lid. I'm going to go in with this darker champagne, and this is called True Me. Okay, so I actually really like that shade and how the look is coming together so far. I'm going to go ahead and go off camera, and I'm going to just apply mascara and some lashes, and then I'm going to come back to buff out and add some color to the bottom lashes. But I am happy with how that looks based off how things were going at the beginning. It's nothing revolutionary, but I'm sure it'll look really pretty with lashes and stuff too, so I will be back once I've put those on. I just used the original Ardell Wispies and then added a little bit of mascara. So now I'm going to go in to the bottom lash line with this NYX Professional brush. It's just like a pencil brush, and I'm going to take that middle shade, the warmer toned brown, and I'm just gonna get a good amount of that on, tap it off, smoke it in the lower lash line. I'm going to go into the Maybelline Lash Sensational. It's one of my all-time favorite mascaras, and just coat my lower lashes. So this is the final eye look. I'm actually really surprisingly happy with how it turned out. I think it's really pretty, it's smoky, it's sultry. So despite me liking how the look turned out, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this palette. Just looking at it, I don't think there's a ton of looks that you can create with it. Yes, you could do a lighter look with like these three would be pretty, and then you can do a darker kind of smoky eye, which is what I went for. I just feel like you'd be better off getting a ColourPop palette. If you're gonna spend $13, $15, may as well spend that extra couple dollars and get a ColourPop palette. I'm not bashing Essence. I think it's incredible that they made a palette like this, and it's not terrible by any means. If you're a beginner, just getting into makeup, I would recommend it. Although ColourPop, I just feel like you can get more for your money. It's better quality, the shimmers are nicer. So I guess it's up to you. And again, this doesn't speak to the other 9-pan palettes that they came out with. I can't attest to the formula on those. This is just my experience with the Be-You-Tiful palette. So yeah, that is all that I have for you guys today. I hope that if you were thinking of purchasing this palette for yourself, you have come to a conclusion by watching this, or if you were looking for a tutorial on the look, you were satisfied with this and maybe try this look out for yourself. Comment down below, let me know what other products you want for me to review, do a first impressions on, etc. etc., preferably drugstore products because I am trying to get more into the drugstore. Please like this video if you liked it. It helps me know what you guys like to see, and